easy and as quickly as you possibly can. And for BLG and LNG, this is kind of a, I know it's again super early, but a kind of a must win, because it can lead to an advantage later on in the season. But we'll get back to that later, as we are jumping into picks and bans. Renekton, Karma, the Nocturne, and there is the Senna all banned away.
Yeah, so we're going to see, obviously, a lot of respect given towards that Senna pick coming across from LNG. Still a couple of picks for me that are big ones. You know, the likes of Renekton that we've seen is pretty much got... Sorry, the Renekton's off the board. The Rumble, I meant, which has 100% presence, but that is going to be taken off the board here as well. And then I'm curious to see what LNG decide to go for. Varus, a big pick still on the cards here, an 11-11, which could be removed. And that means then you're kind of looking for BLG, at picks like potentially the Ezreal, which we've seen high priority on in the AD carry role, although... For BLG, with aiming, he kind of tends to go more towards something like the Kai'Sa and these kind of things.
Could get away with the Lee Sin ban as well. That has been a pretty high priority. Or the Udyr. That is going to be our 6th ban in this first ban phase. And now with BLG having first pick, Varus, Lee Sin. Obviously, we've mentioned a couple of those. There's also, you know, a plethora of supports if you wanted to try and pick that up early. There's a lot of options here for BLG.
Yeah, I think still, though, we're looking at those picks that are super flexible, like the Lulu here as well, that's just been locked in, because PP God can play it, Zika can play it, I mean, hell, you can even toss it up to Bubu if you really want to. Like, these picks can, and these Enchanter supports are so strong right now, and that's not even taken into fact, again, just a reminder, we are on 11-11, Hex Flash is not enabled, so it does mean that your ability to punish these Enchanter supports with these heavy engaged supports is a little bit less.
Yeah, well, we'll see now what the first pick for LNG is. Going to be that Varus. They were hovering the Lee Sin a little bit, so they might be trying to trade off the Lee Sin and the Varus, but Lulu kind of does a lot to negate a lot of what Lee Sin wants to do as well. Very good at wave clearing, very good at just keeping people alive, and also that wild growth is a knock-up as well, so should he get on top of someone, it is very easy just to kind of dissuade him and CC him up. And there is going to be the Lee Sin locked in, along with, straight away, the set for the side of BLG.
I was actually surprised that we didn't see the set locked in on LNG side. Set, an incredibly strong top laner, very few people that can really deal with them. And there we go, that's going to be the Lulu Kog'Maw for the bot lane. This is actually something that we saw, I think it was BLG try and bring out before, but then we had the pause that ended up messing everything up, so they weren't able to play the Lulu Kog'Maw. But this is something that BLG definitely like to play, but does need a little bit of attention in that bottom lane, because with picks like the Nautilus here and certainly an aggressive poke champion like the Varus, you can set up super well for dives on that bottom lane and look to try and pick off this Kog'Maw with multiple people to the bottom side. So BLG certainly need to try and have their wits about them in keeping this Kog Lulu bot lane safe.
Well, the timer's at 0 and has been for a little while, so I assume that Nautilus is being locked in for the side of LNG, as we wait to see now 100% confirmation of that. But like you said, a lot of safety here, a lot of good engage as well with the set for the side of BLG. And for LNG, they're looking at that kind of thing. There we go. Thank you very much, Gabe, as we finally update. You've got a hell of a lot of engage now. You've got the Lee Sin kicks, you've got yourself the Nautilus, the Chains of Corruption as well from the Varus to be able to try and pick people off is a massive thing. And I do love what LNG have done with their first ban here, getting away the Kindred, saying, look, not even a hope if we just get onto Kog'Maw that he's surviving. He's going to be dead to rights 100%.
Yeah, and when we saw this the last time around, it was against EDG. Flandre ended up taking the Gragas into that top lane as well. And basically, at this stage, you know that BLG are like, right, if we just protect the Cog, we're fine. So as LNG, you want to find as many things to try and disrupt that as possible. So you're seeing the Gnar taken away, which of course can jump in, cause a lot of issues with the stun for the Kog'Maw. But you want to try and get rid of things that can cause big issues on that side now. LNG getting rid of the Xin Zhao. Potential for the Gragas ban here, or even maybe something like the Gangplank that at least can throw down that cannon barrage and cause a lot of issues for Kog'Maw in trying to chase down these fights or have access to them in other ways.
No, gonna go for the LeBlanc though, as Icon, a pretty bog standard staple pick for him. Just making sure again that aiming on this Kog'Maw does not get 100 to 0. But for LNG, they might have a couple more picks up their sleeve. Do they go for the Diana? I would actually like to see this. We actually saw combos with the Yasuo during MSI, and I actually really do like this combination. They lock it in. I love this. That does say to me that it's going to be Ale on this Lee Sin and top side, with Tarzan taking the Diana into the jungle.
Now, I'm just throwing it out. Can still be Icon are using the Lee Sin as well, but it definitely feels like to me it is going to be the Diana of the jungle. The only problem that I have with this is that Diana needs a couple of levels before she can really become useful. Yes, she can get into lanes and will have the Nautilus to try and set her up, but does rely on that level 6 to have kind of a bit of agency when it comes towards her ganks. So it does mean that at least for, you know, a Lulu Cogbot that wants to scale, you've at least now got a bit of a buffer from that level 1 to 6. However, BLG are going all in when it comes here. So, 2 Season 11 champs locked in on the same team. That's going to be a lot of damage coming out for BLG. So, basically what I'm looking at here is Zika, who will be piloting this set. He's been actually really, really strong in the set in the past. We saw it in their game against EDG. I really like the way he set up these engages. Bubu will be piloting the Gwen in the top lane. And it'll probably be Weiwei taking the Viego. Now, this is a bit of an issue for BLG in just that, like, the sheer amount of scaling on this team means that you don't really have an early game right now. Viego doesn't have the damage in the early stages of the game to try and fight these skirmishes, or same when you look towards a Kog'Maw, hell, even the Gwen. So you're highly reliant on, you know, not seeing LNG do anything, but I'm not so certain that you're going to get that time here, especially as you look towards like Ale having a lot of presence on this Jace in the top lane. You look towards Light and Iwandi in the bot lane that can set up for plays as well, especially if Icon can make his way down to that bottom side. So BLG definitely going for a heavy scaling composition.
Very, very heavy on the scaling, but they did end up swapping that set to the mid lane with Gwen going up to the top, so we'll see now how that one kind of works out for them there. But curious to see now. I love how they just kind of doubled down and said, you think we're going for a Protect the Kog'Maw comp? No. We're going for a skirmishing comp that will be able to take you out in the late game regardless if you get the Karma or the Kog'Maw or not. But for the side of LNG, they have a lot of options here. If they can get ahead, if they can get that snowball rolling for them, it becomes very difficult to actually contain the Lee Sin. We've seen it a couple of times, both in top and in mid lane, where the Lee Sin gets a kill or two ahead, and it's just impossible to deal. He's roaming everywhere. He just becomes this unstoppable snowball rolling down the mountain.
Yeah, I will say, though, it's not exactly the best of matchups for Lee Sin. Set kind of matches the sustain. He can trade relatively effectively against the Lee Sin. So it really does come down to the Lee Sin trying to outplay the set in a lot of situations, which always makes it a little bit more difficult. Now, if Icon, though, can get control of that lane, I 100% agree. We already talked about the potential for, like, big dives down towards the bottom side. You can do the same against Gwen in the top side as well, just because you've got a lot of melee champions there that it doesn't really matter if she has the hollowed mist out or not. But definitely this is a game where LNG need to get the ball rolling, because if they just kind of take their hands off the wheel and let it go until the 20-25 minute mark, you're already going to be in a situation where BLG are getting towards that 2 to 3 item mark, and you're not really in a position to try and contest them anymore.
Well, we are on to the Rift. We'll see how it all plays out. BLG on blue, LNG on red. Big win here for either of these sides if they can take the series. And the one thing I can guarantee with all these champions that have been picked, we should see a lot of action. Yes, the Kog'Maw's a scaler, but I feel like with everyone else going around the board, especially when you look at Bubu in the top side, who has taken that Ignite into the Jace as well, they're looking to try and get those early skirmishes. And looking down the items, we actually see the Varus feeling pretty damn confident in his early lane phase, going for that longsword triple pot into the bot lane.
Yeah, what it says to me is that Light and Iwandi want to go for a lot of heavy trading down here. Now, like, you do see the Dorn's Blade quite a bit, but certainly when you're playing against the Lulu and a Kog'Maw, and you've got the melee support, PP God and Amy will be trading pretty aggressively, so having those extra pots is always going to work pretty well for this lane, and just trying to keep yourself sustained. Now, looking at that top lane matchup, though, this for Bubu is where you will get pushed in pretty heavily in the early stages of the game. This matchup becomes a little bit easier to deal with when you hit that level 3, and you get access to both your dash and that hollowed mist, because you can try and trade a little bit more effectively. Jace doesn't have as much opportunity to use his range, but you still have to be careful of, like, when Jace changes into melee form, he can just hop in on top of you, trade very quickly, and then knock you back using his E as well. So Bubu still needs to be very careful with how he plays this matchup, so Ale doesn't just run away with this.
Yep. Cheeky little movement there from Zika, pushed in the wave, now knows exactly where Tarzan is pathing, so knows that the top side is almost certainly gone. Can go now towards his top side, or path towards his top side to keep himself safe, knowing that the Diana is almost certainly going to be coming from the bot lane. And this is going to be just a little bit of a farm fest, and pretty much standard in the bot lane. Very hard for a Kog'Maw Lulu to be able to kind of push against a Nautilus and a Varus. They need to make sure that they're not losing any kind of pressure or leaving any openings for a Nautilus hook to lollipop them into an engage.
Yeah, you can see though both junglers are kind of swapping sides of the map. Diana is going to be moving down towards the spot side, playing towards where she knows she has that strength and light. Now Wandia's icon. This is what we're talking about. It's not the easiest of matchups for Lee Sin in this mid lane. Every time you go and try to trade up, you're going to get face breakers, or at least a couple of autos thrown your direction as well. And if you ever try to trade back with something like the Sonic Wave, you're just setting yourself up for a big old haymaker to the face. So it makes it really difficult for Lee Sin to try and get control of this lane until level 6. Where he gets access to that Dragon Kick and can try and combo that CC lock into bursting down the set.
Well, the Viego was up on that top side looking to see if he could get a cheeky Krug kill, but there was nothing doing for him. Just drops a ward, leaves, and now resets down towards his bot lane. And you can see both junglers almost on identical mirrored ways. They're both heading towards their top side, both heading towards their Krugs, just making sure that they have themselves fully farmed up for that first skirmish. And speaking of first skirmish, where do you anticipate it happening? Because I feel like both teams are kind of waiting for their big level 6s to really make anything happen.
Yeah, I don't really think that we're going to get much out of BLG. Maybe you can try and make some plays with Zika having control of the mid lane, but honestly, Viego needs time to scale up. He is a very item-reliant champion. Yes, he can do well in, some 1v1s, but when you're in an early skirmish, he doesn't have the damage really to burst someone down quickly. The CC is somewhat nice, but not a big enough factor to play into it, so I'd definitely be expecting LNG to try and move down towards these early dragons, use the fact that Light and Iwandi have the control down here, and then try and force BLG to take these fights before they're really on board with this late game scaling.
Oh, bit of a lull, as they would say in the LCK, much more tempered than probably what we're used to in the LPL, at least what I was used to. Our games had, kills and summoner spells all being thrown at each other at 3 minutes into the game, and it's going to be like this for a little bit of a while. We can see the resets coming into that bot side. Icon now just trying to see if he can get the push into the mid lane, but in a lot of pressure, Zika with the auto attack gets himself the kill, and is actually feeling like he can take on Tarzan. There's the ultimate. They're going to use the showstopper to bring in Ale. He gets knocked back. He flashed forward. 2 kills out of nowhere. Zika owns the mid lane.
Hey, we said the only place BLG could look to play around was Zika, and Zika just makes the play himself. That was so damn good from the BLG mid laner, and why we were highlighting that Zika is an incredibly strong set player. When we saw him on this champion against EDG, he was having so much impact when it came towards the lane, but also these later team fights as well. And now that you've given him 2 kills to start things off, this set's going to be a big boy.
Set is going to be a big boy. Mama going to be proud as he picks himself up 2 kills. And aside from LNG, yes, you gave over 2 kills, which is bad enough, but you committed so much to that as well. Tarzan had to go in. You committed the teleport from Ale as well. You only get the flash from Zika and the giveaway 2 kills. So just in the grand scheme of things, you're so far behind now in that regard in terms of the top side of the map. Luckily for them, they do have control on the bot side because of that Nautilus Varus, and they are still able to turn it into a dragon, but they've got to be careful with this set now being able to roam around and how big he is.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you do get the dragon, as he said, for LNG, but mid is going awry. You're not even getting a huge amount of punishment here for Ale in towards the Gwen as well, so I'm still waiting to see a heck of a lot more coming through from Ale in that top side, and if that's going to be the case, great. You've now kind of gone, okay, well, Zika can try and make these plays in mid where he gets onto Icon. You can see there, it's not even close, right? The second Icon comes forward, you just get that burst damage through. I love this showstopper coming in from Zika as well. And, it just completely turns around everything that LNG were trying to do, but now you do leave yourself vulnerable as LNG going, damn, okay, well now Zika is going to be able to fully push in this wave. He'll have control essentially when he wants, and then, as you rightly pointed out, Penguin can move to these side lanes and try and make sure that they're in good spot and not just falling behind.
See what LNG can do to maybe kind of mitigate this one. The early push-up, though, means that you see Icon roaming up towards this top side. Is going to have to back away as he was spotted out, but that does mean BLG loses a couple of minions, loses a bit of gold and CS to the tower. Ale gets himself a turret plate, so a little bit of a kind of like, I'm sorry from Icon to Ale after he forced him to teleport towards the mid lane.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it's like not really getting enough. BLG played that super smartly. You see that like Zeke was like, look, I got at this big wave that's about to crash into the turret. I can't help out. But now because Zeke is pushed in, he has the opportunity to move and try and make some plays happen. Showstopper is available, but it looks like LNG are aware that something might be happening.
Aware, and also knowing that they can just clear that wave. You can see there just the piercing arrows doing so much to be able to stop that wave push, so they can't get the wave into the tower. They don't get the backdoor bonus, and they don't get that initial kind of, you know, setup, if you will, with the tower focusing the minions. So not the best, unfortunately, for them, as we can see Tarzan taking his blue, finally level 6, so will be able to set himself up with a hell of a lot of damage. And this is all about his, you know, his target selection as well. If he's able to get on top of this Kog'Maw, it will be huge for them. But like we mentioned in chat, so like BLG are not just a one threat pony, they have a lot more threats in the stable.
PP God just hovering mid here. You can see that a lot of what BLG are trying to do is just hold steady and make sure that they're trying to keep their eyes on what LNG are up to. Now, with BLG being able to take this top side Rift Herald, they're going to be super happy, because one of the ways that you can accelerate this game super well is by having LNG take that, start to transition that into like mid lane towers or even top towers, and then keep the game going that way. But Icon forced to flash away.
Yep, just have to use his summoner. We did see in the picture-in-picture. PP God also used his flash in bot side as the chain of corruption was coming down upon him. So no flash on the Lulu. Not the most important summoner for the Lulu, if I'm being totally honest. Not really the most impactful for them. They're not an engaged support, so, you know, fine with losing that one as long as it keeps them alive. And 2 kills still in the favor of BLG, but the gold's only about 300 or 400, so it's not actually a huge disadvantage. It's actually been kind of mitigated a little bit with the bot lane kind of, or excuse me, yeah, the bot lane having a little bit more pressure in the side lanes, and also the plates going over, as we can see the Dragon's Rage from Icon down onto Zika, just to make sure that there was no extra engage in the mid lane.
Yeah, again though, like, if we're having this super slow paced game, right, we're 10 minutes in, you're not going to be able to really get rolling here as LNG. You have level 6 hit by Tarzan. Like, this is the point in time where he needs to start getting aggressive. Like, I want to see him moving with Icon, who has this push in mid, to start making plays. Because otherwise, you're going to get to a point where aiming is just too big. Wei is going to be able to finish off this Divine Sunder, and then he's going to be an absolute menace as well. You got BLG, who's very quickly working up towards the Rift Maker. He's going to be getting that Nashor's Tooth as a second item as well. And when you hit that stage as BLG, that's where you are incredibly strong. So this is kind of where you're starting to see, hey, look, LNG, this is all great and wonderful that you're getting to a point where, you know, you've hit your ultimates, you're able to make these plays, but they actually need to start sticking now.
Do need to make some plays work. I'm actually curious to see now what this Diana goes for. I would have assumed the Riftmaker is aiming, takes a piercing arrow through the heart, as might take another one. Needs to be very, very careful as he walks up towards these minions. But I'm curious to see what he will end up kind of building towards. He obviously went with the Conqueror. That's the bog standard. I was assuming we would see the Riftmaker, but maybe going for something slightly different, aiming. Oh, he's playing with fire.
The Riftmaker is kind of when you're fed as all hell. You can do a lot of work just because you sustain so much, and you're heavily reliant on getting a lot of those auto attacks off to try and be a little bit more of a menace in those team fights. But definitely the build we've seen has been more the Hextech Proto Belt into the Zhonya's Hourglass, and gives you a hell of a lot of burst potential, and plus the opportunity to set up these fights, go into Zhonya's, and not give too much time for the opponents to burst you down. So I imagine that he's still going to be heading towards that Zhonya's build, bit of tankiness, a lot of burst, and something that can kind of follow up on, like, say, the likes of Icon or even poke from Ale and Light.
Yeah, unfortunately, my enemy Diana always gets super fed, so the Riftmaker is the guarantee. As in my particular solo queue games, we see Ale now going toe-to-toe with BLG, has to force his flash away. Ult was used there by BLG, and he's just backing himself now underneath the towers. Speaking of underneath the tower, we can see the Rift Tower being used into that mid lane. There is a Dragon available. TP's only available for Ale, none available for BLG, so he would not be able to join this fight unless he started moving now. You can see BLG, they're the ones that have control over this river, but LNG, they're not going to give this one away for free.
Yeah, I think they're actually going to try and make a play on towards Light on the bottom side of the map. Maybe try and cut him off before the rest of the team can arrive. Zika, I'm going to say, though, is quite big right now. Stride Breaker is completed, so he could potentially set things up. But again, it looks like BLG are very aware of their win conditions. There's like, hey, look, let's not rock the boat. We know that we want to scale to the late game. Third, fourth Dragon is where we really want to be fighting. After we've at least completed one Mythic, and we're in a better spot come the later portions of the game.
Yeah, weren't really in a position, of course, to contest that one. Don't need to overforce it, so they just back themselves away. The Eclipse has been finished off for Ally, so he's had a nice little power point there if they want to try and make something work in this top side. And I will say they have some pretty decent vision control up here on the side of LNG, so if they did want to go for something, they might be able to, as Icon takes a hell of a lot of punishment there, as Zika just really making that Stride Breaker work.
Again, though, this is opening up BLG with so much control. You can see here, right? Weiwei and Zika working together. This was one of the big things that we wanted to see from BLG, was how well this mid-jungle would work together, how well they'd work with PP God. And we saw it against EDG. They were consistently roaming together, making things work. So I'm happy to see that at least BLG are getting a little bit more control of this map, making it that bit harder for Tarzan to have an impact. And again, like, the only time here BLG are actually going to worry is at this dragon in the next 4 minutes. If you are forced to fight at that stage, you're a little bit worried because you don't really have like 2 items on your Kog'Maw. You've barely finished the first items coming through for Biu and Weiwei. And this is where I believe LNG can kind of make their stand and really blow open this game.
Well, no taking of camps from Tarzan. He hextechs forward and make sure that he gets that blue buff. No way in hell they are losing that to the Viego. But it actually, with all this invading that's kind of coming out from Weiwei, like, yes, they are going for it, but I actually really do like the fact that Tarzan is constantly clearing his camps, making sure that, yes, the Viego is getting in and they are trying to go for something, but they're never really getting any purchase and he's just wasting time. So it actually leads to about a 4, maybe 3 or 4 camp lead as Biu gets jumped on. Needs to be very, very careful. Again, no flash on this Gwen. Needs to be so careful, especially with Icon missing.
Yeah, the standard here for Gwen has been to take the Ignite. It makes your laning phase that little bit easier. You're able to rely on the Hallowed Mist and also access to your dashes to make sure you can escape away from a lot of that funny business. But you can see Icon really wants to make something happen up here. He's kind of gone the scenic route back to mid lane a couple of times, trying to just poke his head and go, hey, ally, anything going on up here? But unfortunately, Biu has been playing incredibly safe in this lane. He's been hyper aware of any roaming that's going on, and I think this speaks volumes to BLG as well. Like, this is a team that has traditionally been very good at, you know, slowing down the pace of the game, waiting until they're strong. I mean, we saw it a lot when Meteor was on the roster as well, but now it feels like for BLG, they've kind of like, they've understood, hey, look, if this is the style of game that we need to play, that's totally fine, but let's really bring it super slow, completely take the pace of this game down, and it means nobody can get these early leads. I mean, you have the 2-kill lead that's there for BLG, but I mean, the gold is fully matching. Yes, there's a bit of a CS difference in a couple of lanes, but not enough to actually write home about as LNG.
Well, they've traded off the pressure on bot side for a rift into the hands of Viego, so that's going to be the first tower of the game going down in this bot side. And you've actually got a bit of a wave here as well, as we can see Icon might be in a little bit of trouble. Does have the Dragon's Kick as well. Doesn't know fully where everybody is just yet. Zika's still trading with him. You can see Ally paying full respect towards this top side. Knows that with the lane swap, with the Rift Herald having just fallen, he is probably a prime target for a dive. So respects it, backs himself away. They're just going to lose the tower. Ends up being a trade.
Yeah, the thing is though, like, it's a bit of a trade for LNG, right? You've already got that bot lane tower. You're answering with a tower for BLG in top. Yes, the gold is going to Amy, which is wonderful. But you've got the faster reset coming through from LNG. You've got the dragon in a minute, which Amin is only just going to start backing away from. So honestly, I think as LNG, you just completely drift down towards this bottom side now. Make sure that you're in control of this. Now, it does suck for them that it's a Cloud Drake. It's not the end of the world, I feel like, for BLG if that soul does end up going across to LNG. But still, like, the pressure is on here for BLG. Their timer is a lot shorter than the timer that LNG has put them on.
Yeah, they need to start making plays pretty fast, and in 30 seconds that dragon will spawn. That will put LNG on Soul Point, and I will say the Cloud Drake or Soul for the likes of Tarzan, on this Diana, the Lee Sin, the Chain of Corruption, it can be very, very significant for the likes of LNG. So this is something that they can do a lot with if they are able to get that one nice and early. And 20 seconds till that spawns. They have got a couple of items. Stopwatch has just been picked up as well by Tarzan, so they're looking for this fight. They know that this is the moment that they need to strike if they want to try and get this game accelerated.
Yeah, the only way that BLG can try and win this fight is if Zika gets some monster flank off onto one of the key carries like Light or Ale. Otherwise, they just really don't have the items to try and take this fight. Icon, though, might actually get caught out.
Oh, flash by Weiwei does burn Icon's flash, but no flash on the jungler is kind of a worth trade. As we can see now, the showstopper coming in off this Chain of Corruption goes straight down on top of PP God, who gets knocked up and trying to burst him down. He will be taken out of this fight, so you have no support now for your Kog'Maw. No heal, no flash. They got everything they wanted. They did use a lot of engage tools. Speaking of engage tools, they're going to try and jump onto Weiwei, who gets caught out a little bit. He has nowhere to go. He burned his flash earlier, and he's dead. Now Aiming's in a lot of trouble, and this is all LNG. They take down the set. Aiming forced a flash. They're going to be on Soul Point.
It was a nice try from BLG, and specifically Zika, who tried to make that pick that we talked about work onto Ale, but the rest of BLG weren't in a position, and LNG, they regroup, pick off PP God, and now they get the dragon, putting them onto Soul Point. And when you got the next one that's going to be spawning at basically the 24-minute mark, this is a pretty dire straits now for BLG.
Yeah, you can see just how this kind of one started, and again, big thing to notice, Weiwei did not have his flash. He used it to try and catch out Icon, and now you look at the map, they're able to push in all the waves, they get themselves into Soul Point, they gain themselves a lot of gold, they now have themselves a 2,500 gold lead. There's just so much happening here for the side of LNG, and that tower will also fall just to add insult to injury. And you've got the Serpent Fang as well now for Light. He's picked up his second item so early in this game.
Yeah, exactly. So basically now with that Serpent Fang, 35% of those shields are negated by that. But you can see here, right? Like, I actually like the attempt from Zika. Aiming just wasn't on the same page. He was so worried about Light and Iwandi there, the threat of the Chains of Corruption, that he's going to back away. And it means you don't actually have the burst damage to take out Ale, especially with where Weiwei and Biubiu were positioned. So then you just get the re-engage coming through. Tarzan played that incredibly well as well, holding on to the second part of his E so we can follow over the wall, burst out all of the members of BLG, and Aiming, I mean, he's completely stuck here. There's nowhere really for him to go, but we said already, like, BLG, the scaling isn't there yet. You have one item across the board, and I think this was my biggest gripe with their composition in general, was, like, you're kind of late game or bust, and unfortunately, they're going bust before they get to that late game.
Yeah, and you're looking at the 2-item spikes now for the likes of LNG, Diana, Lee Sin, Jace. Like, these guys will just pop you in a second. Yes, you're looking for 2 items and 8 them. Honestly, you're looking for 3 or 4 just to try and get the damage down, because the damage is just so much more prominent, if you will, on these champions from LNG. Still not over yet, of course. Still only a 2,500 gold lead. It is Soul Point, though, so you can see LNG almost certainly just trying to push in these waves, keep the pressure on so they don't lose any objectives, and then look to fight in 3 minutes' time around that Soul Point.
You see LNG now, they're trying to see if they can spread out, work around the map, get Icon up there. Now BLG will actually be able to get this mid lane turret, which is going to be pretty nice for them, a bit of gold back in their favor, but you can see that the map state is not really on their side, as Tarzan does land a Q but doesn't want to follow up.
That was close. That was very close there. Biubiu. No flash again. Honestly, like, you take the Ignite and, you know, the Teleport, obviously you're double combat summoners, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you take the Ignite because you want to kind of be able to trade aggressively. You want to be able to try and find people out and just kind of, like, you know, assassinate them effectively, but it hasn't really done it. 0-0-0, hasn't really been able to make much of this Gwen pick so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's the standard on Gwen at this stage. Because you've got the Hollowed Mist to keep you safe from so much, like, ranged attacks, you've also got so many dashes available in your kit, and you tend to just kind of go, okay, cool, we're going to take the Ignite, because it does make your laning phase a little bit easier, and also then you can, as you said, trade more aggressively. Now, I'm not going to, like, fault it. This is bog standard for Gwen, and I'm not surprised really to see it, but I think the bigger issue, again, is just more so, like, he needs time, right? You're still a long way from going towards something like that Nashor's Tooth. I know we tend to see a lot of the Cosmic Drive second, just to get that extra little bit of movement speed and try and close the gap onto some of these targets, but like, it's a long time before Gwen's relevant. I mean, hell, even Wei Wei is still not relevant because he still needs to try and finish off the Black Cleaver here before he's actually able to try and do a huge amount. Then you look towards the rest of the map as well, like Kog'Maw, yes, you've got 2 items, but you're still waiting on something like a Wit's End to really come through to try and give you a little bit of protection and also that damage, so you're still a full item away for a lot of the carries on BLG before they're actually relevant, let alone trying to match where LNG are and the strength of their composition.
Well, the fact that we've had to delay there from, or we have seen LNG delay for the last 2 minutes means we are going to see 2 towers going over in favor of BLG. So they are opening up the map just a little bit, and they still have yet to see LNG take down that mid turret. So all outers are down on the side of LNG. They have much longer lanes. They have to try and establish their vision a little bit more carefully. And with 45 seconds until that dragon, they need to fight. But as I said, the big items coming in. You've got the Mana Mune now, which is almost going to certainly be completed for Ale before this fight. He only needs 40 more stacks on that. You've got the Zhonya's now for the side of Diana, and you've got the Black Cleaver for the Lee Sin. So a lot of power coming in now if they can get on top of people. But this is kind of critical mass here for the side of LNG. If they don't make this work, if they get delayed again by another 5 minutes, this is when it starts to get dicey.
Yeah, you can see as well, like LNG, you've got the range to play with here too, right? They can continue to poke, they can continue to just see if they can work down people like Amy and PP God. And yes, the shielding is nice, but with no like healing here from like a Moonstone or anything, it means that that damage is going to stick once you get through the shields. Now, BLG first onto the dragon, trying to burst it down.
Yeah, they are going to be able to burst it down because I just know where way in terms of getting into this fight. Now we'll see a bit of an engage come in. BuBu jumps forward, gets hooked, just pops down the W to keep himself alive and safe. A lot of poke coming in here, but PP God not going to drop down from that accelerated shock blast. And this is kind of the problem, though. I just highlighted there a second ago. You've now delayed this, Dragon Soul spike for another 5 minutes. That's 5 minutes to get a Kog'Maw another item, to get Set another item, to get all of these different scaling aspects of your team for BLG. And for LNG, they're running out of time.
And it was a poor setup from LNG as well, right? You know how important this is, and they end up resetting so late that BLG can bully their way into River. Now, LNG trying to collapse onto this mid lane. Tarzan on the side.
Yeah, they should be able to pick it up, as everyone did have to have a bit of a reset on the side of BLG. So LNG finally taking out the 3rd and final outer turret. Now move themselves back, but again, it was a 2,500 gold lead. Now it's only about 1.2, 1.3 thousand. It's really not moving anywhere fast, and this is a little bit of a stagnation here for the side of LNG. You had all the pieces of the puzzle, you just didn't put it together, and I feel like they're going to be bit in the butt a little bit because of that.
Yeah, this is not looking so hot. Because LNG, like, we're kind of talking about, hey, look, they needed to accelerate this game. Now, they did a good job, like, they kind of had started to dot the I's, but unfortunately crossing the T's hasn't gone their way just yet. And now, they will get another chance in 5 minutes, but as you said, that's 30 minutes into this game now. Those 3rd items that we were talking about going to be creeping in on towards the likes of aiming. When you look towards BuBu as well, he's actually gone for the Zhonya's over the Cosmic Drive, but still, like, he's going to be in a good spot where he'll be most of the way towards the 3rd item too. So for a lot of these carries, they're getting to the point where they are now relevant, and you're not going to be able to just burst them down, right? The Sterix gauge on towards Zeke is going to keep them nice and safe. Zhonya's means you've got a decent chunk of armor here for BuBu to try and deal with Light and Ale, and like, again, for the Serpent's Fang is wonderful against the shields from PP God and also onto Zika, but the problem is that it, like, the actual raw stats are only 77% efficient. So you don't actually get as much as, say, like finishing off your Mura mana or gaining a different lethality item.
Yeah, again, the Serpent's Fang is great, as you said, against those shielded targets, but it is very much you buy it for the passive of the shielding, not, for the raw stats of it. As you can see on the other side, you're looking at almost, a full crit build coming out for aiming, and he's going for the Gale Force, he's got himself the Phantom Dancer, building up towards that Infinity Edge as well, and you don't really have amazing engage right now from the side of LNG. It's very difficult if everyone just kind of keeps their distance to be able to try to fully, jump on someone. You can see there just a few seconds ago is that they had Ale jump on top of BuBu. It wasn't really kind of enough to kill him off, and then he just had to back away because he's like, okay, I've done my combo, and there's no hard CC here to be able to stop you completely. So We'll see now what LNG want to do. One good fight from them will be huge as they finally have 3 items onto their Varus. So those piercing arrows are going to be doing a hell of a lot of damage to regardless of whoever they hit. And you combo that with an accelerated shock blast, you should be in a decent position. But there's a lot of if, buts, and maybes to try and make this one work for you.
Yeah, I think that with the composition that LNG has, they're actually relatively okay with kind of just letting BLG come into them. You've got three melee carries. You've also got Amy, who's got to step pretty far forward. So between like the ult you have in Tarzan, Iwandi having hooks in his own ults, even the Chains of Corruption, you do have a lot that you can deal with for BLG here. It's just a case of like, we actually haven't seen LNG trying to put them to use, right? We've seen Ale trying to peter off towards a side lane and not really be in a position where he's working with any of the rest of his team. Same when you look towards the majority of LNG, they've been fairly lackluster in actually trying to actively make these picks work, look for plays around the map. And when we're getting towards the 30-minute mark and you have a 1,500 gold lead, not even, I mean, you're going to be pretty happy here as Amy, who actually has gone for the Navori Quick Blades. So having more access to that W is essentially what we're going to be looking for, as Amy realizes, hey, look, if I can have that uptime this whole time, I'm going to be in a great spot.
Well, speaking of great spots, not so great spot there for Weiwei as he gets chunked out. Bubu has to try and help him out there. As we can see Icon using his teleport. And with that chunk out, do LNG use that to try and force a fight around this Baron? They know that they're on a ticking clock. They know there's only so much time they can really kind of go without really kind of, you know, waiting for this game to kind of back off from themselves. But they just don't feel confident, and they waste a TP, and they just don't go for anything. It just feels like stagnation.
This is the same. This is exactly what we saw out of LNG in spring, right? Was like, hey, look, if this team snowballs, muy bueno, they look absolutely fantastic. If they can't get that ball rolling, here you go. It's just like they don't really know how to accelerate the game from a position where they're even, and now they're actually starting to creep behind just because we're getting these big items coming through for those core carries on Weiwei. Steric's Gauge completed there on BLG. Weiwei completed Steric's Gauge, but Engage.
Oh, here we go. They found out and they got everyone down. Light just got caught out by the Gwen using that needlework to take him out. And it looks like your time is up, LNG. 2 kills going over to the side of BLG, and that could spell Baron straight away. And there's just nothing for them to do. LNG just kind of, again, waited and waited and waited until, well, BLG pulled the trigger.
Yeah, and that was the problem now. BLG, they're in control. They've scaled too well, and now they're going to get the Baron. Yes, you'll get this soul as LNG. It's nice, but at the end of the day, it's not enough to combat just the difference in composition at this point in the game. And I feel like BLG have kind of done their homework here, right? Like, if LNG aren't able to snowball a game, cool, we're actually in an okay spot. So BLG pick a scaling composition, have complete control in the early stages when it comes to vision, preventing Tarzan from doing everything. And even the draft was very much about trying to minimize Tarzan's impact in the early stages. And then we get to fights like this where they're just too far ahead. You can see Bubu using that Hollow Mist perfectly, making sure that he's not getting damage from anyone else as they manage to pick off the Varus. They turn next towards Tarzan, and there's just nothing left in the tank for LNG.
Yeah, it just feels like it's just kind of, you know, again, like you said, LNG just not pulling the trigger, and then BLG going, all right, cool, we got 3.5 items on pretty much everybody. Let's go. Let's just go. We beat you regardless. And now you have to deal with this baroned up waves that are going to be crashing into most of your towers, and you still have to respect the damage that can come out from LNG if you're on the side of BLG, but you're feeling so much more comfortable now.
Yeah, and honestly, with this Dragon in 5 minutes, it kind of feels like it's BLG's. It's almost like LNG have kind of just opened up the map to go, well, yeah, I mean, look, here's the actual Dragon you care about is BLG. And yes, they're going to try and trade here on towards Bubu in the bot lane. Ale is doing a wonderful job of trading effectively, but they're going to try and commit here.
Yeah, they are going to try and commit. There's the flash leads in Dragon Rage, as we do see Bubu going golden. Weiwei's thinking about it. He wants to see if he can try and go for this, but it is already dead. Weiwei now in a little bit of trouble. Might have to try and get himself out of this one. Has to pop his own stopwatch. And while that's all been happening, BLG are pushing in the mid lane, but it is going to be 2 kills now. 2 quick picks for the side of LNG. And just as much as BLG open the door, they slam it on their toes straight away, and that's going to mean this Baron play does not crack open the base for the side of BLG. They're going to have to back themselves away, just take up the waves, and just try to lick their wounds a little bit.
And they would have loved to have cracked open that bot lane turret, because it would have given them so much more control over this game. You get deep vision on this bottom side, you can put pressure as you come back out of the base on towards the actual base of LNG, and then fall back towards Dragon in just under 4 minutes. But now you've given LNG the opportunity to shove in these waves. They're actually going to get a tower for themselves, may even get another one with this push in mid, and LNG are back with at least the tempo control on the map.
Yeah, tempo control very much with LNG. It seemed to have sprung to life. That one mistake around the mid lane has led them to have a little bit more life in their step. They actually turned that Baron power play to about only 500-600, which when you start off with 1500 at the start, definitely a net positive as you're looking at it from the side of LNG. And with 3 minutes, 20 seconds to that Elder, but they also have themselves the Cloud Soul. They're going to be feeling a little bit better if they can take a fight. But again, I just feel like if, you know, BLG could just cover up those mistakes, maybe even go for a 5v5, they're just in a stronger position overall.
Yeah. I think Ally is doing an amazing job, though, in this game. Like, he has been consistently making sure that, you know, BuBu doesn't have this big impact on the side lane, and when you get these heavy trades going and Ally is able to set this up, it shuts down a lot of what BuBu wants to do. Now, BuBu has been doing a great job when it comes towards like the actual team fighting and that, but in these side lanes, if you're not able to spread out and use the Baron buff, especially on a pick like Gwen, who can do so well in a side lane, although BuBu doesn't really have the build to go for it, it means that you're actually doing pretty good here as LNG and just dissuading a lot of what BLG wants to do. But again, 2.5 minutes until this Elder Dragon is up. That's where we're going to see this game cracked open.
Very, very close. We did say this was a temperature check for both of these squads. They are very, very close in terms of their relative skill, and big win if you can get the series off of the ground here from either of these sides. But we're now seeing, you talked about Ale, he is now on 4 items, 1 away. He's got the Shirelda's Grudge as well as his own Serpent's Fang, so he is going to be shredding through pretty much anybody. His job is to find someone and just beat them down. We can see the Bio-Arcane Barrage just kind of coming down to kind of pepper the health bars as much as possible. And LNG, they can't really defend this tier 2. You don't want to lose the game off of defending a tier 2. If you want to try and take it, it'd be at the inhibitors, so they back themselves away. And with 2 minutes until that Elder, probably just going to see both teams farming up, trying to get those final items in, and go for one last final fight.
So for BLG, the biggest thing they need to do is control vision on this bottom side jungle. Because if you're looking at LNG's comp, right, there's not really anyone that wants to particularly face check BLG. So if you're preventing that vision from getting any further into this jungle, well then you're going to be making it really hard for LNG to commit towards this dragon in 1.5 minutes. Now, you can see they've got a bunch of vision that they've just placed down, which means for LNG, it's going to be tough to actually get the vision you want in river and find ways to contest. Light, we need to try and shove up this mid lane and get some priority back for LNG, so maybe they can enter through mid lane, but there's no way they're coming through their own jungle.
You know what kind of upsets me, and to an unreasonable degree? That
Bad
skip
anime.
and slash, the E on Gwen is skip and slash, not skip and snip. You know, like little things like that. Little things like I just like thinking about, and I'm just there kind of going like skip and snip would be sounding so much better, but Zeke goes forward, just eat a chain of corruptions. That's a big lockdown tool not available here for LNG as we move towards this Elder Drake. 40 seconds until that one spawns. Both teams can melt it down. It is pure HP, and we'll see what they want to go for. LNG, though, they're looking to try and gain control of this mid lane. BLG, you're a little bit too early to this party. You got to wait in the foyer until everything is ready. And now they move in towards this mid lane. BuBu now with Weiwei trying to move forward. There's the showstopper to start it all off. Zika, though, taking a lot of damage as he tries to keep himself alive. BuBu as well, down to about half HP. Accelerated Shock Blast not going to land. Still got flashes on AD carries, still waiting for flash to come up on Icon, so that Dragon's Lee Sin kick can still be available. TP is going to be used here by both the solo laners, actually all 3 of the solo laners as they come back into this fight.
Look at the ults on LNG though. BLG used so much in that engagement that they don't have any of these ultimates left. This could be LNG's way back in.
They might look for it. Health bars are pretty damn healthy, but Zika, and of course you got BuBu coming in on the backside of the Zika, though, taking a lot of punishment straight away. This Dragon, this Weiwei, actually almost dead straight off the bat. They both go golden, but where are they going to go? The set is dead. The Dragon is still procced, down to about half HP. Now Aiming needs to run for his life. He cannot stay here anymore. He has no mana. He has no health. The Dragon is there. You've got so much poke. These piercing arrows shot through the heart of BLG in this composition, and this could be enough for LNG to take the game. They'll take this, they'll take Baron, they may be able to take for the base.
This was all or nothing for BLG. They tried to go in too damn quickly, and it meant that with LNG being able to back away, just about escaping, Ale could TP back in. You have the 5-man squad with no ultimates used at all by LNG, whereas BLG had invested everything in the kitchen sink. The Gwen ult was down. You had the Viego, the Set, and even the Lulu ult was gone, which meant that when they actually tried to go for that fight, they were all reliant on aiming's damage, and unfortunately, with how strong LNG are and the poke and the range that they could use, that's just not enough for the Kog'Maw to deal with.
Yeah, the Kog'Maw was relatively safe, didn't have to blow Cleanse or Flash, but have a look at the replay here, and you can see the double TP, it's just they're a little bit too away from each other to make the combination of the double TP work.
It's also the difference between a set flank with Showstopper or without, right? If you actually have the Showstopper there, that could turn into a mega play, but without it, LNG walk away relatively healthy, whereas the Pokemon that's coming through from Ale and from Light is doing way too much to the backline of BLG, so they're forced to back away. LNG get this Elder, and also the Baron, but they have to see what they can do with it now. They have a great siege composition, they have a lot of damage that can obviously come out with the Elder as well if they get someone low enough, but they need to start making these plays happen. But with Waves not really in a position to go for it, it could be tough to fully crack several of these inhibitor turrets.
Well, they are pushing it now as a 5-man strong. Well, 4.5 as Diana trailing off at the side. It's going to be a little bit difficult now for the side of BLG to really deal with this. You can see just the pure shred with those extra auto attacks you get with the side of a Jace and a Varus. You're able to just kind of push down these
just looking
inhibitors.
to end.
They are looking to end. They're going to just keep pushing in. They don't need these side waves. They just need the towers. They just need the game. There goes the hook. Just swim off to the side. And LNG, they feel like they're not going to be able to kind of push this one just yet. They're going to try and get the next wave in and then look for the final push. This is a big, big moment here for LNG. You've still got the Elder. You've still got the Baron. Baron for an extra minute. They only got the Elder for another 20 seconds. So still very difficult for BLG to go for something.
This is the last
that
push.
Comes down. Last push. They're posturing, they're pushing in, they're seeing if they can go for it. One Nexus turret will fall. There's the hook in, they catch onto Zika, who is deleted. 7 seconds left on this Elder. Have they got enough? There is the flash kick into the Zhonya's for this Kog'Maw, but he's already gonna be dying. There's nothing left for BLG. LNG, they get the 2 mega buffs. They end the game through mid lane. They get the clean ace, and they take game 1.
That was an incredibly close fought game 1. LNG though managed to pull it out of the bag, bringing back that one team fight for the Elder Dragon and closing out the game.
Big, big win there for LNG. Like we said, they were running out of time. The Kog'Maw, the Viego, the Gwen, all hyper scaling towards that late game. And for BLG, they're going to be feeling a little bit dejected. I feel like that was their game. Once it got to those 3 out points, their game to lose. It felt like they just kind of took a couple of panic plays. That definitely the double TP being misaligned definitely kind of hurt them a little bit more. And yeah, it's unfortunate for them, but they do have obviously another opportunity to strike back.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing here is that like the BLG composition was in a position where it actually could have tried to power forward. We saw them get control of the game, but that kind of hero play by Ale and also Icon on that bottom side of the map, where you end up getting the engage on towards Bew, they take him below half, you get the Fuewe trying to help him out with the Viego, but they're not actually able to get it. Double kill, completely turns around control of the map, and when LNG are out to push in all these lanes, they can start to get a little bit of control back. They slow down BLG and just buy time to get to that Elder, and from that point, just that team fight not going their way really just shut down BLG.
Yeah, really, really did. Small little mistakes, and this is kind of, the LPL, the League of Inches, that kind of way. It's the idea that one small mistake, you could be in total control, but one misstep, that just leads to a whole different snowball myriad of effect that just kind of leads you down this dark, dark hole that ends up, unfortunately, losing you the game. And for LNG, I do obviously were a lot of positives from the that they came back into this game. You mentioned it in the game, but Ale was a fantastic player, but the mid game definitely lacked a little bit from me, and I want to try and see them come back a little bit stronger as we go through the season in those mid games, because otherwise, like you said, similar to Spring, they just kind of stalled almost and didn't really go anywhere with it.
Yeah, I definitely believe that this game was like in BLG's hands, and they couldn't quite get it together. Like, they jumped the boat in that last fight, whereas if they'd actually just kind of let LNG walk into them, played around the darkness, they could have set up opportunities for Zika to look for that showstopper flank, for Weiwei to find nice opportunities, even help Bubu to get something done. But unfortunately, because they didn't play that patient game, they invested way too much, and then LNG were able to take it back. But we kind of talked about, look, as you were kind of rightly hinting, that if LNG had played that stronger early game, we never really would have got to this position. LNG would have been able to have full control, but they just never got the ball rolling, and that is definitely a worry when you have a composition like this.
Yeah, always a worry when you're coming into it. Of course, for BLG, a lot of positives there. I feel like, again, just a couple of small missed decisions that kind of lost them the game in the end, but we'll be curious to see how they kind of transition this one. Great play at the start of the game, of course, from Zika, but we'll have to wait and see. We're going to show it to a quick break, and when we return, we will have pick and ban for Game 2.